important event, the screening of the documentary, one of the outputs of the project that has been going on for some time on markets in West Africa. So we have people online and we also have some people here on site. So we are delighted to be involved in this project. So without wasting time, let me quickly welcome everyone and invite the director of the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies, where the documentary is going to be screened, to come and just say a word or two to welcome everybody. I invite Professor Ayodele Yusuf, Director of the Institute.
Thank you very much. You have just been welcomed by Dr. Abisoye Eleshi, prominent member of the research team of what we are trying to screen today. Both of us on site, you are welcome. Thank you for coming to join us here. And I always welcome those that are online. Thank you. I can see Nora Lee there. And see others very soon. Thank you very much. This is the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies, a leading research institute on African studies in Africa. We want to go beyond Africa because already we even do research on the diaspora, African diaspora. So we're already operating beyond Africa. Well, the institute is young, established 2017 to do research on Africa, Africans in the continent and Africans outside the continent. And this is just one of those projects that we're undertaking. This project is between the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies and the School of Architecture, University of Liverpool. University of Lagos and University of Liverpool are collaborating on so many levels. This is just one of the levels. There's one that is on the way that I'll keep under my armpit for now. A smart lab, we will discuss that later on. For this, I want to welcome you to watch a documentary that will be streaming an output of our project on market. We would wish you to pay attention, and we will be glad to have your comments, observations, go on this. Thank you very much. You are welcome.
Thank you very much, So at this stage, I'd like to welcome Professor Olamide and Professor Nancy to be there in the room. Let me quickly invite Professor Nancy to give us, to say something about the project. Professor Nancy, you have the first.
All right, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Those joining in Lagos and those joining from around the world. The background to this project is, I think I'll first start by acknowledging the various entities that funded the project. We have the Alan Pulling Fund at the School of Architecture, University of Liverpool. We have the Research Development Initiative Fund at the School of Architecture, University of Liverpool. And we have the Leverhulme Trust through the Urbanism and Coastal Heritage Lab in the AHUWA Center at the School of Architecture. So we acknowledge and we thank our funders for helping to make this happen. Now, the documentary is one of the outputs for the Market as Urban Heritage at Risk Symposium, a project that we are working collaboratively with our colleagues in Lagos. We have been looking at the concept of markets as living heritage, and given the turn the socio-spatial impact of globalization, of modernization over time, we are seeing that a lot of our markets are being demolished and being replaced. And this cuts across West Africa. Over the last 20 years, we have documented over 60 local markets that have been, pulled down to be replaced by the entity called ultra-modern market or shopping mall. And we find this concerning within the context of preservation of cultural heritage as well as sustainable livelihoods, which are some of our priority areas in the AHUWA Center, as well as the Institute. And that's why we embarked on this journey to really investigate what is going on, how are markets being replaced, and more importantly, what needs to be done in order to preserve the markets that still exist, and in order to perhaps shift the needle in policy direction towards protection and preservation of this living heritage. I mentioned that this is one of the outputs. Other outputs will be coming as the days go by, but more importantly, please check out the AHUWA blog. We will be sharing think pieces along this same thematic over the next couple of weeks. And when my colleague comes to take over at the time of the discussion, you will hear more about the blog articles that will be coming up. So thank you very much, and we really look forward to this documentary as well as the conversation that will follow. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you very much. So we'll just go straight to the business of the day. We now would like to start screening the documentary. For that, like the documentary filmmaker to say something about the documentary. And after him, shoot. Start the article. Over to you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you once again for this privilege to be a part of this production, joining the academia to do this production. It's always been an exciting one, a revealing one, to work on this project, and this particular one has also been quite revealing for us and quite engaging. I hope we all have a happy viewing. It's the first draft of it. We're still working on it, and before in due time it's going to be completed fully, but I believe strongly that you are still going to have a good time watching this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before we start now, please, we appreciate feedback from you after the documentary.
We appreciate feedback from you. As Nike said, we are still continuing the work on markets in West Africa. So please, we'd like you to give us some very interesting comments and feedback about the documentary. All right, stay back and enjoy. Thank you.
Ọjà jẹ́ nǹkan tí ó tóbi tó dẹ̀ jẹ́ pàtàkì, torí ọjà jẹ́ ọjà tó jẹ́ yẹn ni pé tá bá ní ọjà ó pín sí mẹ́ta. Tá bá gbé ọmọ sẹ́yìn á fi ọjà fún ọjà kan nìyẹn. Ọjà kejì ni pé bí èèyàn bá ń darí ibì kan ó láti múra kó ṣe dáadáa. Ọjà kẹta tó jẹ́ tọjà ni pé à ń láti bọjà dáadáa kó lè tùbà kó lè túṣẹ́.
There is no better place to understand a city than its market. In its trade and even its noise, you can read a people's history, their beliefs, their power, and their hopes. Markets are living heritage, and like all living things, they can be lost. Their fragility calls for the shared attention of researchers, planners, and cultural custodians before the lesson is gone for good. In Africa, a traditional market is beyond commerce. It is a place of prayer. It is a courtroom, a classroom, a bank built on trust. It governs itself and feeds the city. Yet city planners often call it informal, an eyesore to be planned away.
I reject the word informal with reference to traditional markets because many of these markets predate the entities of state. For example, a place like Sangros Market predates what we know today as Lagos Island local government. These places were places where people from generations have been coming to buy and sell, to meet, to build relationships, to worship their deities, and to promote their livelihoods.
They are very structured, they are sophisticated, they have their plan, they have their leadership structure. And this is what we have refused to see when we talk about market planning.
Now, the quest for structure, for organization, and perhaps the greed of the developers is what is bringing in this narrative of informal.
What looks informal at first glance is held together by a deep and gentle order, one that has long placed women at its center.
The traditional market, at least in the West African context, tends to have a very gendered dimension where the market is the domain of the women.
For instance, there's this saying that that means the market gathers all women in the community. So it's believed that women are actually the original owners of the market. They are the ones that buy mostly. They are the ones that also sell mostly.
Kò sí nǹkan tẹ́ máa pé obìnrin nípa ọ̀rọ̀ ọjà tí wọ́n lè dúró, ọkùnrin ò lè dúró bí obìnrin.
And women traditionally have held leadership position in the market. For example, in the Yoruba culture, the Iyaloja, who is the head of the women in the market, traditionally been given that title by the king and sits in the palace as a titled chief and one of the decision makers for the community.
Iyaloja, which literally means the mother of the market, or Iyalaje, which means the mother of the act of selling.
This title sets women at the center of the city's commerce and its politics alike. In recent times, that heritage has been shifting as men come to hold a mirroring position. Yet it is still the women who keep the deeper sway.
We now see the phenomenon of Babaloja, where men are now being recognized within the market space. While there are some allusions to political undertones within this, with this development, we can also say that perhaps it's resulting in the democratization of the market spaces and expansion of this domain to being, led by both men and women.
Trading side by side as one community, and at its heart sits the sacred. Before the first sale, there is prayer. Indigenous belief runs through the trade itself.
The highest point of spirituality in the community is the market.
They started as places of worship of the respective deities of prosperity and gathering.
A common characteristic of these markets is the presence of shrines, where prayers are offered periodically.
Because I'm very I'm on Boaje from Bala, Ram Alabekuta, Iloni, Ìsẹ́yìn gbogbo wọn máa mọ́jà wá tà alẹ́ ìná máa dé báyìí ń sìn irú ọ̀la bí ẹ̀ní ríbi kẹsẹ̀ bọ̀tẹ́ bá wá láàárọ̀ yà so irú ọ̀túnla náà the same thing.
You know, mostly you will see Ajé shrine. Ajé. That's why when you go to the market, I want to buy something, and you are negotiating with the seller. The buyer is negotiating with the seller. They always say Ajawa, that Ajé will come, and Ajé is not to be the deity of selling, you know, deity of wealth, because they feel that wealth can come through that practice. You know, so all organic markets always will have the Ajé shrine, and all buyers, all sellers in that market must always contribute to the appeasement of that particular deity, Ajé.
Ojúbọ láti wà lọ́jà káàkiri. Ẹ gbàgbé ń parí pé àṣà lóde kò sí ìgbàlódé kankan lórí àṣà o kò kúrò o ẹ láti bọjà dáadáa. Ọjà dàbí àwọn èèyàn tá à ń jẹ jíjẹ tá à ń mú mi. Tá a bá jí láàárọ̀ a máa jẹun a máa mú mi. Bẹ́ẹ̀ náà lọjà rí. Àbọ̀jà bá ṣe máa bọjà ní pé Ajé bíbọ ká lè rí músápò ká lè rówó mu lọ́lé. Ń tá a bá tí wọ́n ṣe lábà ń ṣe kò ní kó ní church máa lọ church kò dẹ̀ ní kó ní Muslim ìlọ́yà nìyẹn ní kálukú lọ kírun.
Spirituality here is more than worship. Like so much in the market, it is a heritage handed down through generations, passed on in the same way as the art of bargaining and the lasting ties between traders and customers.
Èmi tí mo dúró yìí tó bá di November máa ṣe 67 ọjà náà bí ìyá mi sí ọjà yìí náà bí mi sí èmi náà ti bá àwọn ọmọ tó jáde yunifásitì nínú ọjà yìí ni.
So markets are also repositories of generational wisdom. And I speak particularly of trades like the Elewe Omos, the traditional herbalist in Yoruba land.
Elewe Omo, wọ́n wà lọ́jà yìí. Ẹ bá bí nǹkan kan ṣe ọmọ ń sìn, màléríà ibà ń ṣe, wọ́n á fún yín lágbo, wọ́n á fún yín lógbá, wọ́n á fún yín láwo. Ẹ lè bá ọmọ yẹn lára mu. A ti ń ṣe nǹkan tó yẹ pé àwọn products tá à ń fi sí capsule fúnra wa, a ti ń ṣe tá à ń fi sí lipton, sí kí n ta ti ń pàkẹ́ sí lipton. Torí ẹni tí ó fẹ́ ṣàgbo so n bá máa ṣe ni tí nǹkan yẹn bá ń ṣe ọmọ wọn ní láyé jíjẹ jọ ẹ lọ mú lemon grass tí bàbá ń dààmú ẹ lọ mú lemon grass àtọsàn wẹ́wẹ́ wọ́n á sè wọ́n á fi jàgán sí ewé tó ń pè ní jàgán ẹ ọsàn tó ń pè ní jàgán ẹ tó bá ti sè dáadáa tó sọ kalẹ̀ tó tutù tó fọmọ ẹ mu a máa tọ̀bà yẹn bí ìgbà tí à ń mu oògùn òyìnbó náà ni.
These women take pride in their spiritual practices and in the knowledge passed down through generations. But recent demolitions and new market designs rarely favor those traditions. And so a harder bargain begins with governments and developers across the cities of West Africa.
Wọ́n jẹ́ ti fi gbogbo ẹ̀gbá, wọ́n ti gba ọjà tán mọ́ wa lọ́wọ́ ti fi wọ́n kọ́lé. So kò jẹ́ kí ó kún bí ó ṣe ń kún mọ́. Gbogbo space tá fi ń ná wọn, àwọn ralé ti rà wọ́n ti ń tà wọ́n. Ìkan ọjà orí ẹrú wọ́n ṣẹ̀ wọlé last year. Wọ́n ti pé ọdún kan sì a ṣe ń bẹ iṣẹ́ máa wọ ẹbí lágbà dùbúlẹ̀ mi lágbà pé kó jọ kó wọ́n wá ṣe kó bá kọ́ padà. Táwọn apọ̀jà kan bá dé a sọ fún wọn pé kọ́ yọ̀ǹda ojú àṣà àti ìṣe wọn láti fààyè ẹ̀ lẹ̀ lọ́jà.
Herbal medicine sellers, for instance, state that new building designs don't favor their trading pattern.
Àwa tá à ń tàgbo a lè bọ́ sókè tó a máa gé nǹkan. Ìsàlẹ̀ la máa ń fẹ́ kí a wà torí nǹkan gígé ó máa mi gbìgbìgbì. Àmọ́ alágbo ò lè lọ sókè lọ tajà. Gbogbo àwọn èèyàn wa yẹn tí wọ́n lé ń bẹ̀ yẹn torí pé gọ́ọ̀mẹ̀ntì ò fún wọn ní ṣọ́ọ̀bù sísàlẹ̀ wọ́n affect wọn gbogbo tẹ́ bá wo inú complex wo.
And with recent times, we found increasing interest by different where these markets are being placed. The urban development or urban planning officials who also want to impose a semblance of order on the city. And in imposing this semblance of order, they want markets to have structure and to have a similarity of design. And that's where the interest comes in.
When they destroy an existing market in the name of building sophisticated or modern markets, there are so many things that they have also destroyed with it. For instance, the heritage structure of the markets. They don't take this also into cognizance when they want to build new markets. We have seen cases of Mushin, seen cases of Yaba, Sabo, or even Unigbo, when government just comes and say, oh, we want to destroy this place and build new markets for the people.
It would be hypocritical of us to say that these markets do not have logistic problems. But my thinking is that we can address the functionality of the market without pulling down the market and erasing the histories of the market and erasing the livelihoods of those who have been trading in those markets, the custodians of the heritage enterprise in those spaces, as well as removing the opportunity and access to goods and services for those who patronize those markets.
Rebuilding these markets has proven to be an uphill task for the government. Many are left abandoned for years after demolition, and those that are rebuilt can take several years to complete.
Process of rebuilding these markets or converting them into malls or ultra-modern markets, as they tend to be called, is also an arduous process. Take, for example, the situation in Cotonou market, which was demolished in order to transfer the computer village to another location. That market has essentially become a collection of sheds, and the proposed computer village relocation still remains a mirage, because what we find in the proposed site is a wasteland.
This site in Katangoa is Lagos State's designated location for relocating Computer Village from Ikeja, a long-planned 15-hectare ICT and business park with modern infrastructure to replace the congested Otigba hub.
But this is Katangoa, this is AHUWA International Market.
Current occupiers, many trading here for over 40 years, are open to welcoming Computer Village owners. They envision shared space.
The Lagos State government do justice to us as they promise that they are not taking us away. They are going to put our community market. That community market is not going to be the way it is like this. They have a plan. The plan they have is a very good plan for people to see and for people to stay. The environment will be okay. So on that aspect now, development of this market will increase day by day.
Lagos government pledged a modern market at Katangoa under Ambodi's deal, complete with architect plans, housing and plaza. But funding failed, COVID hit, and by 2019 to 2020, the developer was axed. Roads lie abandoned. New developers remain elusive. Traders endure self-funded, congested shacks as the vision seems to fade.
Now, relocation of is welcome, but the implication is that we don't want relocation, we want extension. If somebody wants to forcefully say you must move from Kabin, people will live here and go and get their shop in Awolowo Way in Ikeja, opposite Alamsa Secretariat. There are plazas there, and they will spoil what is called the landscape of Ikeja itself. We are talking about over 5,000 businesses, and they can move anywhere because they don't want to go to Apulegba.
From Lagos to Accra, one question lingers over every market reconstruction and relocation. What does the government really intend?
But whenever the government wants to undertake any developmental projects, they find a way to bend the markets down. And I recall that one of the mayors doing President Mohammed first time, the market was raised down by fire. And that market is solding, they deal with second-hand clothing. His statement was that now it is time to embark on our projects. So even if you didn't anticipate that the fire outbreak was caused by the gang gangs, these techniques will definitely saw it as they have a hand in it, that you haven't in the way of Kruger mix.
An example I would say, we have places like the Alade market that at a time was the only market in Ikeja local government, but it was pulled down and replaced by a shopping mall that is not aligned with the everyday access to goods and services that the residents of Ikeja were patronizing Alade market for.
There's a lot of land grab race that is being championed by the states and its agents. And that land grab is being framed as modernization and urban renewal. And if you don't change that kind of thinking or challenge that kind of thinking, it will be hard to actually begin to see how the heritage or the everyday, that is being curated by these traditional markets and the people who are taking it, will not be able to protect it, the way we should.
All the signs suggest the government favors turning these traditional markets into malls, a move meant to modernize the city's image and expand commerce.
And then if we move forward, even to looking at some of the malls, I'm yet to see a very successful mall in Lagos. Some malls, many of the malls tend to be used as places of entertainment than places of commercial activity, where you find that during times of celebration, families are taking their children into the mall to buy things and all of that, outside of the everyday enterprise some of those places were known for.
If you go to the mall established by the DVT and what does, people will rent this shop, but they used to shop at stores. They will still go to the streets and display their goods. You find in some markets in Bodija, a lot of these traditional markets across West Africa, people will basically be working extensions. So they have a shop there and then they will build an extension. Money can actually display. Most of the traders will spend maybe 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon, bringing their goods out and taking it back into the shop. Few months you go there, you are sweating.
The dangers to this cultural heritage go beyond physical structures. The globalization of trade is another force at work, quietly eroding the traditions of the African market. In Accra, Ghana, families whose names have long been tied to a specific trade are being challenged by foreign businesses moving in.
And this is the culture of the families are known to be dealing with some kind of expense. And now with the presence of Nigerian brothers, gradually their businesses are dying out because almost everybody prefers to go to the Nigerian because relatively the things are cheaper. And it is not only Nigerians, Chinese, now there's a China law in Ghana, likewise Melcom. And instead of them embarking on wholesale, they are retail. And so it's causing a major havoc to the indigenous markets and then the heritage. Most of them are dying out because of this. And now everybody prefers to go to the China mall, to the Melcoms, and of course, when Nigerians do their house.
The pattern repeats across the region. In Nigeria, Chinese businesses have moved into the tie and dye market, and the communities who have carried this craft for generations now face stiff competition.
I mean, it's spoiling our market leaders. Their production is very cheaper than ours, and the material is somehow, let me call it, lighter. When you are wearing the material, you'll be hearing noise. Like our own, it's 100% cotton. 100% cotton. Their own cannot put starch. Our own we can put starch, iron it. Their own we cannot iron it. If you iron it, forget it.
These traders are redoubling their efforts to protect a trade handed down to them through generations.
We went further to go and meet governor, the House of Assembly, and the House of Assembly. They promised us that they will do something. We cannot stop anybody to sell their products, but they are helping us too. Because those that are doing wedding ceremony, burial ceremony, they pick those clothes because our own, we cannot produce more than our efforts. But their own, they can produce mass production. If you want 500, for our own, if you want 500, to take us like 3 4 months to produce.
We cannot remove the impact on local economies of a lot of traders by not addressing, the elephant in room, the goal of the state. What we have protest, for decades is the progressive decline of support for small businesses. Success are not growing. There's no innovation, in a lot of those spaces and a lot of that. So it's hard to compete in that kind of environment.
Aside from the challenges posed by the government, the market faces a quieter threat, a younger generation whose attention is being pulled elsewhere by social media.
So people are challenging that not people, to what extent are they interested in some of this originality, authenticity that we talk about within this space? How do you think about what they value?
A tradition survives only if the young take it up. Yet culturally, practiced apprenticeship asks for years of patience in an age of shortcuts, and fewer are choosing it. What the market knows cannot be inherited. It can only hand it on.
One that is quite fascinating is the Igbo apprenticeship system, where over a number of years, a young boy, because it has a distinct gender dimension, a young boy is trained in the art of trade and then helped to set up his own enterprise.
It was not an easy journey because it's something you go for some years, depending on how many years you are doing with your master. So like me, I went for 7 years. And some of them will say to you, they will take you to their importers. They will take you from where they are buying their goods. They will tell them, this is my boy. I've said to him, anytime he comes, give him goods. Before even in 6 months, you have this is how it is. And we go out, things are possible.
So, but you find out today things are changing. Boys no longer work to a jail. So they no longer stress from going 5, 6 years under apprenticeship because they want people. So there's a trend of young trend of people looking for online things.
Disregarded traditions, globalization, demolitions. Each of these threatens the heritage of the marketplace, and each of them asks the same thing of us, that we chart a way forward and protect the knowledge and the bonds our markets have always held.
I believe that improving the functionality and the efficiency of the market space is important, right? And you don't have to pull down the traditional markets to do that. And that's why we advocate for the recognition of markets as living heritage, just as we recognize and acknowledge certain buildings of historic significance. That status should be ascribed to certain markets that hold such histories. And more importantly, the crafts, the trades, the practices that are cultural, about cultural significance, that are important in our identification as a people, should continue to be preserved and conserved. And we should also have an eye on the future, starting to think about how can we consolidate on the market as a living heritage and propel it to be relevant for the urban future that we are envisioning and that we are aiming to create.
Because recognize market as legitimate urban systems, not things that are inferior or temporary, in a sense. And talking about provide design and policy, following and taking from advice around policy flexibility and submission, understanding how people use markets and the way they want markets to be to design, or imagine.
There are examples of places where the market as a living heritage is recognized and acknowledged. In China, for example, you have many of those markets also still embedding the cultural practices of buying and selling. And in the United Kingdom, we also have examples. I recall the Croydon market celebrating, I think, it was 750 years of operation as a street market over the last 5 years. I remember going to visiting the village of Morecambe that celebrates her market day every 4 or 5 days. And people come around from different places to trade in that market. I also know that the Birkenhead market, which is very similar to Falomo market in Lagos, was celebrating over 100 years, and you still have generations of flour sellers, of butchers, of tea and craft shops still operating in that space. The agenda for the reform of that space is intentional about keeping those generational businesses in that space as part of the city's heritage. And I think if we're going to have a reform agenda, if we're going to have an urban regeneration agenda that works for the people of our cities, we must toe similar lines where we recognize the very value, the very interesting and very important value and icons of recognition and self-identity that are produced over time by the practices in
Thank you very much. Round of applause again, please. Okay, so that was it. Let me quickly say here that it's an ongoing conversation. We are still going ahead with the research on this in West Africa. Somehow we're able to engage in the conversation around market and heritage in Ghana, in the Republic. I still try and move it to other West African countries, see how things will pan out in those countries. So at this stage, we'd like to welcome comments, feedbacks, comments. I know what we have seen, what we have heard. What do we think? Do you think that heritage is so important in market structures? Do you think that there's chance for development and conversation of heritage in markets, in contemporary markets, and what the government is doing to uphold or to give us a new face in these old market structures in West Africa? So what do you think? Comments, please, from the House. Also, we welcome comments from people online. How do you think we can develop this? How do you think we can improve on what we have? Which area do you think we have not touched? What way has this documentary, what way have you been able to see this documentary? Comment. All right, Stacy. Maybe you might have to come here so that the people online can see you. Stacy, yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon. First, I want to congratulate the filmmakers and the entire team that supported this project. I've really learned so much. It's been beautifully assembled, and the very different voices included are all each valuable, and together it makes a really wonderful documentary. So thank you for sharing that with us. My comment is one regarding the representation of youth in this story. And I think there's a tension in the kind of blame that shows up on their laps, that they're only motivated by, short-term kind of money goals, and that there's some kind of failure in the youth to appreciate the 7-year commitment it might take for an apprenticeship here. The tension, I think, is that the rest of the documentary is showing us how the government is, abandoning these projects and destroying markets. So I think the youth aren't actually naive to the pressures on this system. And I think that supports the kind of overall message of the markets, which is that they are valuable spaces that do require a kind of infrastructure, cultural, and important government support to shift this trend. So my feedback is really that the youth here are not, I think, as much to blame as we see in that small segment, but rather they are leading the very future that the government and others are creating. And their divestment from this tradition is a kind of practical one, given the conditions that they're seeing. So I think it only supports the kind of overall message that real change is needed at government levels, at higher levels, and maybe a little bit less on just blaming the next generation, which is a time-honored tradition in itself, but I think not entirely supported by the other evidence presented in the film.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let me quickly say here that Professor Lawanson and the Jalico, as far as I'm concerned today, I'm just a moderator. So Professor Lawanson and the Jalico, you should be on ground to respond to comments and feedback. Would you like to say anything to that, Prof?
Thank you very much for that comment. I think that's really why we've decided to present this as a draft at this screening, so that we can reflect on some of the feedback, and by the time the documentary actually goes into the public domain, we are able to articulate very strongly, these different nuances about different stakeholders to, market heritage. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Professor Carlos.
So Dr. Elisha has said that it's just ignoring. Professor Lawanson, are you there, Prof?
Yes, hi.
That the ball is in your court, unless it's just a comment. Yeah, I wasn't going to pass a comment because I thought it was a finality. Now that Prof has clarified that this is work in progress, in our traditional ideas that we want to stream it, get comments, and need to rework it. And that's why I changed my mind to make this comment. Okay, so market and heritage. This piece is very interesting. But I'm wondering if, like culture, heritage is also sacrosanct. I'm wondering if heritage is not fluid to the extent that we tap from the old heritage, we get into the new ones. So if you go into this market spaces now, I can see Sabo market conspicuously there because I'm used to the market. The building cannot be traced to our heritage as Yoruba people, as West Africans generally. But the people, the software, still think that culture, values, spirituality of the people's heritage are part of the market structure. So this is a kind of competition between the soft and the hard aspect of the market creation. So what I think will balance this more, because I like things to be balanced, is for you, Prof, to look at the new dimensions to the heritage in the market. Once there were markets in Nigeria where Yorubas would dominate in doing everything. But this is changing fast, everywhere, including Lagos. If you go to Computer Village, you see a way in which different ethnic groups in Nigeria co-create the market activities. So in the computer village, it is the Igbo man who owns the shop predominantly. But it is a young girl, or yesterday, who sells for the Igbo man. And when it comes to packing and unpacking, closing and opening of stock every day, it is the Hausa man who does that. This is a new dimension to the heritage. And that's exactly what we'd like to see if you go to Sabo. Okay, it is the Malams who help them to pack and unpack in the money, while Yorubas dominantly say. So there's a co-creation of new heritage in the market sphere, which at the same time does not negate the conventional one of having shrines, having all these things. Perhaps you want to ask the Hausa person or the Igbo person who are inevitably part of this market now, what they think about that black thing that is there. Perhaps your documentary will find it very interesting. How do they see it? Because they are now part of the heritage of the market. So how does a Chinedu see that shrine where you're worshiping Ajay? And how does an Adamu see that shrine? Because he sells his dollar, he doesn't probably worship Ajay. Is it affected? What's his thinking and all these things? So I think you should touch on that, my suggestion, so that there can be balance in terms of the concept of heritage.
Thank you very much for that perspective. It's very interesting. I think we got to know something similar in Computer Village when it comes to leadership, the ethnic angle to all this conversation. Starting with, you'd like to speak up to that?
Yeah, you were already saying what I wanted to say. Prof, you are very, very correct. The emerging new heritage, the mix. I mean, that plays out a whole lot in Kotangua. Kotangua has an interesting leadership mix of Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa in that space. And I think we have a shorter version of this. Our first installation actually speaks to how, for instance, a market like Katangua has that mix, dynamics, that mix of tribes and the leadership structure of how that market runs. Yeah, so I just wanted to make that comment that there's a very, very valid point. We'll bring it into this also. Yeah, thank you very much for noting that.
Very much. I also want to say that this very good insight about the new heritage Cotonou is also something but the question would be whether heritage is sacrosanct, whether it could change or not. It's very important for us to find a way to deconstruct heritage in this situation. We also put that to come into cognizance as we continue the conversation around this market heritage in West Africa. So there's a chat in the chat room. Let me quickly.
Dr. Lashim, please, can Professor Oladupu speak as Director of AHUWA, because we have to leave shortly for another assignment.
Okay. Professor Ola, please.
Hello. Okay, hang on. I'm just going to move my speaker. Can you see me? You can.
Yes,
hello.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I mean, thank you to the team who made the film. I think it's a very relevant and cogent discussion to have about how heritage indeed is represented and being re-transcribed in these marketplaces. I think from an architectural perspective, what's interesting is that indeed the markets have changed over time. Everybody remembers the old Falomore market, for example, which is now gone, right down to Sangros and even earlier historical formats. I think my contribution would be to say, apart from, if you like, worrying about where it's going, are there examples of these markets that have managed to retain some of their traditional status and threads? And that might be something that the film might want to look at as well. I don't know if there are any case studies where one could look at almost a market in its still semi-traditional format. We know that they're going to change, but if we were going to retain bits of heritage, is there an authentic kind of market that one could look at as possibly a template in terms of what has happened in the past and what we should be looking at? Because as has been said, the worry is that everything is going into the mall status at the moment. And surely as indeed creative Africans, coastal Africans, what are the things we would want? What is the essence of a new market that will have all the internet connection, but will also still retain that authenticity and originality, which is something that indeed our market traders and so on are very much part of. So that there's an area there that I think it's that, what might be the future, both architecturally and culturally and connectedly with an international market, an international marketplace that we are part of and we have always been part of. So again, we need to look at what our past can tell us about what our future should be. So we don't have to be looking at malls in Dubai or wherever else. Any other country can be substituted. But thank you very much. I think it was very, very illuminating and I really enjoyed watching it. And I'm waiting for version 2. This is 1.0. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much. I agree with you. I agree with you that this is version 1. Feedback here wants to do something different in version 2, as you said. So I was going to read some of the comments that we have in the chat room. Here we have Olutai Olukorede Peters, who says that I think the kind of democracy we are practicing gives the politicians absolute power to determine the dynamics of the local market. Naturally, I like the local market setup. I mean traditional markets. And replacing the local traditional market with shopping mall is a taboo. I see it as a misuse of power by politicians to amaze wealth to themselves only. Talking about the involvement of governments in setting up markets in society. Kofa says that in 2017, he learned of his spate of demolitions of local markets because they were regarded as chaotic and insanitary. I was involved in a HBS project, innovative affordable market models, looking into the integration of the informal sector to the economic policy framework of Lagos under AHUWA, public space planning for climate resilience. We found the PPP and BOT models used by the Lagos state to replace the open air market as highly problematic for low-income traders. We looked at alternative designs and the ability of women to influence policy on this. So these are interesting perspective to this conversation, and we think that maybe we are not very intentional about what we want the government to do or how we want the government to reform the market, the open air markets. We are concerned about the heritage and the those heritage that have been eroded by this new development from the markets, from the government. I'm just thinking if we are also thinking what we are thinking in this project, if we think that heritage is going to be lost a lot when the government is trying to build these sophisticated market structures, or maybe we have to choose between having modern malls, markets, and retaining our heritage, because of course we know there are so many programs, there are so many sayings, indigenous things that support that there are so many heritage that must be kept in the market. For instance, which I know very well, that you don't just establish a market in the vast society. It's not something you just start one day, wake up one day. You have to confirm, you have to consult. You have to consult the Farenco, for instance, and ask whether that particular place where you want to establish that market into, whether it's actually a good place that will sell. You know, they used to say that should be by Taja. Like, does this place attract a lot of people to the market? So it's not something we just do all those things, and then maybe the appeasement of the Ajay, which is actually the deity of wealth, and in society markets, it is mandated traditionally that all markets should have like it. So when you go to the market and say, I want to buy something, the negotiation is not right. It's a AHUWA, and this is 10 out of the existing heritage in the market. All those things are what we are trying to see if how the manipulation is ongoing from the market, from the government, and from other stakeholders. Victor Omore, I think you would like to say something as we begin to round off.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. This was a very well put together documentary. I did learn a lot myself. So what caught my attention was when one of the local traders said something about the Chinese taking over because of mass production. That the process it takes them to produce the tie and dye is about 3 to 4 months. If they are looking for sample of 500, for instance, and then you got me thinking, how can technology come in here? Because realistically speaking, I wouldn't want to wait for 3 to 4 months to get 500 clothes when I can just go for a cheaper option, right? So how do we preserve this our culture and heritage and the tie and dye industry so that it can mass produce and still have a very good quality, so that people don't abandon it, totally? Because from my thinking, if in the next 4 or 5 years, if these guys keep doing the way they are doing, if they don't evolve into making these things faster, people might just abandon them totally, right? I don't know if you're thinking in that direction as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your observation. We also consider that and see how we can include all this into what we are still planning. Prof. Sam, please. Then after you, Prof. Yabi.
The final note, maybe one of the things that the relocation, especially within this context of markets, will affect is a reflection of the power change in our society. During those days, not only would we be consulted before a market was located, an average main market would be located also very close to the palace of the Oba. And that speaks a lot to the political economy, the mode of production. Because it was believed that it is where people earn their living that they give all information, positive, negative, sentimental, political, economic, family-wise, sociological. And those points of information lie heavily on the kingship. Unlike now, when there will be terrorism in a particular part of the world and say, go and ask the Inspector General of Police. Last time, the king was responsible for everything, spiritual, economic, political, and so. So that is why the Yaloja will be appointed to give feedback to the king or the chief on what women are saying in the market to test the temperature. But now when you take a market from Kenya, for instance, maybe traditionally located very close to the house of the chief, and I'll take it to a better, where where there's no connection between the two. And these are the things that is the heritage that our socio-political coalition in the past has been destabilized. There's no crime in destabilizing it. What is replacing it? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that insight. Can we have you please your name and something else that we want to know about you?
Hi everyone. My name is Onome Foreman. I'm a PhD student studying social ecological systems in coastal communities. And that's a good background to my comment. So in the documentary, which was really well done, I noticed that there weren't any fish and seafood. When I think about heritage in Lagos and Accra and these coastal communities, fish is like a big part of what we sell, what we trade. And so I'm curious about why there weren't in the documentary and also how you selected the markets that you used as studies.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, there were no fishes.
So she was talking about now why don't we have, firstly, that the documentary was well done, and that why don't we have fish markets, for instance, in the documentary, yeah. Considering the fact that Lagos is a coastal area and within Accra and the Republic. Yeah, can we have Mr. Lukwade?
Thank you. That will be adjusted.
It's very, very good information. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well produced. Even the aesthetics speaks to the effort that went into making it. I just wanted to say that there are several stakeholders to the market. As you have the sellers in the market, you have the buyers, and I feel that there are shifting realities that speak to what the society is like right now. I would want a situation whereby you will be able to talk to the younger generation. What do they make of the market space? A lot of people are concerned about just buying, the acquisition. They're not necessarily attached to issues of heritage and all of that. You want to be able to strike a balance and see whether there is an overwhelming concern about the political economy as against the heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to talk about, how we can strike balance between the political economic perspective and then how we can still maintain the heritage importance in the market. So I think these are things that happen every time. I'm serious about it. Thank you very much. I don't think. Okay, so lastly, I have this comment from Professor Odugu. Prof said that I wonder if there might be examples in East Africa or Asia, Latin America. Yeah, Mr. Lanson said, okay, that's something we explore. I really was fascinated by some community markets in the UK dated over 750 years. And Kofanelike, the loss of traditional long-standing markets appears now to be unique to West Africa. To be interesting to look at what has happened in the US and Europe and how they dealt with its famous London markets such as Billingsgate, Smithfield, and involved relocation plans because of congestions. But probably most importantly, the huge increase in land value. That's an interesting aspect to the work, and we are very happy that people are able to follow the conversation. Thank you very much. It seems we don't have other comments. Okay, Professor, let's have Professor Dr. Akin.
Thank you very much. I dozed off a little bit. I want to talk about the length of the documentary. I think it's too long for a documentary that anybody would like to look. But ordinarily, I think it's nice. The quality is good. And talking traditional markets, there are different things you find in a traditional space called markets. You have the products that not everybody would want to sell. You have the things that are meant for ritual purposes. And it's important to identify the things also in markets. I mean, there are spaces you want to relocate and you can do them, well, easily. But when it comes to some traditional things, you don't just relocate them because of the nature of those things that are being sold there. And the last thing I want to talk about is the concept of the Babaloja. Is it a Lagos thing? Did you find it in Ghana? And I don't think we intervened any Babaloja. So I think it would be nice, since it was mentioned in the documentary, to also interview them and see how they are contesting space, contesting roles in the emerging market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your contribution. So this is what we do in IATS. We produce documentaries and we bring documentaries to you intermittently. I'm very sure that for long we are going to produce another one. Still invite you to come and watch what we do here. We have found a way of disseminating our reports through documentaries, and we have seen that it's a very good format for report dissemination. Thank you very much for coming. For people online, thank you so much for joining. People here, thank you so much. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you for waiting. Thank you, Anika. Thank you, Professor Akintiku, Professor Kayode Sola, master students, PhD students. Thank you, everyone. We also thank our visitors from other departments. We hope that next time when we call you, you're able to join us easily. Thank you so much. Okay, lastly, we have the market leaders and government should align on possible ways of making some of the markets a tourist center beyond just a point of buying and selling. Yeah, that's part of the heritage thing that I'm talking about. So I'm beginning to see that there is much more to see, to work on in markets in Africa. Thank you very much. See you later. Bye.